Hey everyone, and welcome to our first tutorial video of Deathwatch 40k Tabletop RPG. I am here with one of my players and really good friends, Saro. Why don't you say what's up to everybody?
Hey again.
Okay. Today we will be looking at some basic stuff about characters, primarily characteristics, which are essentially your stats, as well as skills, and we hope to get into. Okay. We hope to get into uh, the difference between the d100 and the d10, which are the two dice that you use to play this game. Unlike D&D, where you use a bunch of different ones, in this one you only really need the d100 and the d10. I think the d5 comes into play, but only like when you create your character for his wounds and for his past experience. But pretty much everything is a d100 or d10. So with that, let's go ahead and take a look at characteristics. I actually have Saro's character here, so I will pull this up. So here it is. Should be right there in front of you guys now. So let me go ahead and take a moment and explain like what we are looking at here. So up here, we'll just start from the top and we'll head on to the bottom. So for the character name, he writes his character name, Dominic Saro. Player name, you'd fill in your real name, I guess, but his chapter, Dark Angel. Past event, he has one, he just didn't write it down. That's okay. Chapter demeanor is kind of your demeanor is like it's kind of like an alignment if you play D&D, or it helps dictate your character's personality, I guess. So everyone has two demeanors. They have a personal demeanor and a chapter demeanor, and the chapter demeanor is, well, dependent on what chapter you're in, and the personal demeanor is something you can pick. His specialty is a librarian. He is rank 1. Every Space Marine has a power armor history. His was Strength Be Thy Legend, and it gives him plus 10 on his strength characteristic. So, let's go ahead and take a look at this. We'll start with the one all the way on the left and go all the way to the right. So the very first characteristic we have here is weapon skill. Weapon skill is your chance to hit people in melee, as well as your chance to parry people. I'm not going to talk about, at the moment, how to actually make the test to hit people. I'm just going to tell you what the characteristics themselves do, and in the later portions of this video, we'll put it all together and wrap it up. So, weapon skill, like I said. Next one is the ballistic skill. The ballistic skill is used to test your ability to hit people with guns. So whenever you fire, you make a ballistic test. That number in that box, that 30, is your stat. Okay. The next one over is strength. Strength mainly dictates. It's mainly used for how much damage you do in melee. Can also be used for bashing down doors, or I guess general strength tests. But it's primarily used in for combat reasons, for how much damage you deal. So since we are playing Deathwatch, they are Space Marines, and they do have some, cool perks and stuff about them, and one of them is being super strong. So as we can see in the box here, this 50 is Saro's actual strength. So Saro has 50 strength. In the bigger box, now Saro put in some random numbers for his character because I don't know what he does exactly. But what should be in there is... Oh wait, no, it should be... What should it be? I think it could be an 8. When you put the 5, and then you have your power armor, which would go to 8. Yeah, I guess the 8's okay to be in there. So the reason... So he has an 8 strength bonus. The number in the box is generally the strength bonus, or the bonus of the attribute. The bonus of the attribute is the tens digit of the number, and I know an 8 is not the 10 digits of the 50s, but when a Space Marine wears his power armor, he gains 20 strength, which would put him from 50, 60 to 70. Now, remembering his power armor history gives him additional 10, so he'd effectively have an 8 strength bonus, and I believe he might need to modify this a little bit, but I believe he actually has an 80 on his strength characteristic, so you need to modify that, buddy. Then the number in the little box is for you have, so for the Space Marines, how I said their perk, the other perk they get is another thing called Unnatural Toughness. Unnatural Toughness doubles your strength bonus, but this will not double the strength bonus he gains from his armor. So since his armor gives him a total of 30, which is a strength bonus of 3, you basically slap that onto the 10, and the 10 would be his 50 times 2, because his unnatural strength would give him a times 2. So, to simplify a little bit more, for the unnatural bonuses, it'll be easier to explain toughness. So toughness characteristic is primarily used or for tests, it is primarily used when you be like for poison resistance or disease resistance and stuff like that, toxin resistance. So you test your toughness if your character were to take any source of damage or possibly source of damage from it. So the box here that 5 is in, that again represents his toughness bonus, because that's what would be in the tens digit. He could write this in here. He could put that 5 in there, and then take that 5 out, so there would only be a 0 in this portion, which would still be 50. And that's how you're supposed to write it, but he has it differently, which is okay. You can write it however you want. Now, toughness also has the unnatural toughness talent for the Space Marines. So that's why there's an even smaller box, and the unnatural toughness doubles again his toughness bonus, which becomes a 10. Now the toughness bonus is used to soak damage. Whenever he takes a hit, he can reduce the damage he takes by 10 points of damage. So that's generally what your toughness does. The next attribute he has is his agility. His agility is currently 50, which means he has a 5 bonus. Agility is primarily used for dodging, acrobatics. I believe Pilot Personal is also using it. You can see some skills down there that have the AG next to it. Any one of those has to be tested with agility. Agility also governs how fast your character can move, or rather how far he can move per turn. I can show you the movements later, but let's carry on. Intellect, you mainly test intellect, and you rarely use the bonus. From what I've seen, I've never seen the intellect bonus come into play, but the 30, the characteristic itself, is usually constantly tested. As you can see down in the skills here, quite a few of them have INT behind them, which means if you want to use this skill, you have to test your intellect. So, intellect mainly governs a lot of skills. The other thing he has is perception, and I'm not too sure why he has the 6 in that box. Should have a 4 in there, but I don't know. Perception bonus again, so that his 4.
Auto senses, I think.
Oh, did you?
Yeah, I think it's auto senses bonus.
Well, no, the auto senses gives you like plus 20 on it. So when you make
on your perception,
yeah, that doesn't matter. So
I just put it in there so I'd remember it.
Right. Yeah, because when you do test your perception for like sight and smell, you do test against a 60, not a 40. But anyways, so it's okay. So I guess ignoring the fact that he's a Space Marine, but the 40 in there would be his characteristic. So if he tested his perception, he'd test against a 40. There's some Space Marine ability that increases his perception with, I believe, sight and hearing by 20. So if he were to make a perception test, he would actually roll against a 60 because, again, it's Space Marine stuff, really. So what you use perception for is to detect enemies mainly. So like if there's like an enemy hiding in the shadows, you would test your perception against really his concealment, and if you beat him, then you see him, and if you don't, then he stays hidden. Willpower is primarily used for resisting psychic powers as well as manifesting them. It's primarily a librarian heavy stat, and since he's a librarian, he has a pretty high willpower. The bonus for willpower, I actually don't know too much what it's used for. I've never seen the bonus come into play, so that's 6. But that 6D does get tested a lot. Fellowship is mainly used for conversational skills. In Deathwatch, it is also important for the leader to have high fellowship. The higher the fellowship bonus he has, the more cohesion points the squad starts with. So that's a basic overview of characteristics. I know some parts of that might be a little bit more confusing. That mainly has to do with the fact that we're playing as Space Marines. But as long as you have a general idea of what the characteristics do, that's all that really matters. Because if you're watching the videos from my perspective, then you'll never really see the characteristics of the enemies. You'll just see them like, they'll make a perception test, and then you'll see a d100 roll. And then they'll say, yes, I rolled, I succeeded, or I failed. And that's kind of what it comes down to. So if you want to, you can kind of ignore the numbers, but there you go. That's the basic characteristics of Deathwatch. So some of these characteristics are obviously more important for other classes, such as librarians like to pump willpower, and librarians can also be very, very effective in melee. So as you can see, he's put a lot of stats, or higher number, 55, into weapon skill. Whereas fellowship and intelligence would be more important for apothecaries, tech marines, or, I'm sorry, intelligence itself would be more important for apothecaries and tech marines. Intelligence and fellowship would be important for like a tactical marine. So let's scroll down a little bit and let's look at skills. So in 40k tabletop Deathwatch, or any tabletop Deathwatch game, not Deathwatch game, any tabletop 40k game, you have quite a few different skills. All of them are governed by some kind of characteristic. A lot of them are usually intellect or agility that I find. A lot of AG, a lot of INT behind them. So whenever you use like skills, you have to make a test. Tests are when you roll a d100, and the objective is to roll underneath your current characteristic. So, for example, let us take acrobatics. Acrobatics is used for negating fall damage, really. So, if you were to take fall damage, you can make an acrobatics test, so long as you are trained in it. Unfortunately, we are not trained in it. And if you rolled under the 50 here, so if you rolled 50, or if you rolled 50 to, I guess 1, then he would pass, and if you rolled 51 to 100, then he would fail. You will notice that there are 4 different boxes for each skill. Basic, trained, plus 10, plus 20. What these mean are some skills are basic. These are skills that your character does not need to actually train or buy with experience points to be able to use. Though if it is basic, you take your characteristic, you cut it in half, and then you make the roll. So, looking at acrobatics again, let us pretend that the basic was filled in. So this is now black. If he needs to use an acrobatic test, he would actually have to roll under a 25. If he was trained, he can use his 50, so he'd have to roll under a 50. If he had plus 10, it would be 60. And plus 20 would be 70. And that is generally how the skills work. I'm not going to go in depth over every single skill. You'll see a lot of these come out and be used in the game, and hopefully we'll get a good sense of all of them by the time, well, I guess as time goes on, hopefully most of these will be used. Probably a lot of them. So, I guess I can scroll down and just talk a little bit more about the sheet. If you look at this table here, there's the Space Marine abilities, and these are, of course, unique to the Deathwatch campaign for 40k. This kind of goes over all the extra bonuses they get for just being a Space Marine, which is pretty cool. So as you can see, they do not suffer from things like blood loss. They can actually spit acid on things and like burn through, easy walls, or spit acid on someone's face, which is kind of funny. And as you can see, there's quite a few different things. So let's go ahead and talk about wounds. And, you guys could pause, and I'll probably be here for a while if you want to look at more of the Space Marine abilities, but I'm going to go ahead and talk about wounds. So wounds are basically your hit points in this game. You have your total amount, which Sorrow's happens to be 23, and his current amount, which happens to be 23. What happens in this game is nothing bad happens to your character until you go to -1. Between -1 and -10, very bad things happen to your character. Or your enemy, if you're beating them up. So as long as you have positive or 0, you're okay. I'm not going to go over critical damage in this game. I am going to be saving that for another video. Fatigue is usually something that actually happens from critical damage, or there are some skills that can cause fatigue. Fatigue basically, so like let's say you had, okay, so this would be easier. Let's say you had 1 fatigue. So your fatigue rating is 1, and you got to make a acrobatics test. When you make this acrobatics test, you have to, you incur a -10 penalty on your test. So if you had 50 agility, but your fatigue was 1, you'd have to roll a 40 or lower. So the higher the fatigue number, the more penalty you get on your tests. So like 2 would be -20, 3 would be -30, so on and so forth. The other thing about fatigue is if fatigue ever matches your toughness bonus, or goes higher, your character goes unconscious, which sucks. The other thing we have here, underneath it, is insanity. Every character, or every Space Marine, every Deathwatch character, every Dark Heresy character, every, I believe, Rogue Trader character, I don't know, any character you roll has an insanity rating. When you start the game, you have an insanity rating of 0, and your goal is to not allow it to get to 100, though that's not always in your control. Things happen to you as your insanity rises. There are 3 for this specific game, Deathwatch. There are 3 unique things that happen to each Space Marine depending on their chapter. For example, Sorrow, do you know what happens for the first level for Dark Angels off the top of your head, or no?
I'm pretty sure it's extreme paranoia. It's like all my any cohesion test I make has like a big negative to it. You can actually enter my own party's cohesion with it. Pretty sure is what it is.
Okay. And as it gets higher, it gets worse. And if insanity ever hits 100, the character is effectively removed from play. Though we might have different rules when we get there. Because I don't know, it's just weird rules. But yeah, so according to the book, if your insanity gets to 100, your character is removed from play, and you die, pretty much. So yeah. Primarch's Curse would be, it's just the name, like, so, I don't know. If you played a Blood Angel, your Primarch Curse would be the Black Rage, or I think that's what it's called, the Black Rage or something. And that's if you look in the back of the book, you match that up with, again, your chapter, and it just tells you what effects are bestowed upon your Space Marine as he gets more insane. As you can see, below it, we have movement. Movement is, like I said earlier, tied to your agility bonus, and dictates how fast your character moves in combat. So, I'm not going to get too much into combat yet, because I'm just going over basics in this video. But you can see his half action is 5 meters, his full action is 10, his charge is 15, his run is 30. Again, I'm not going to explain that too much. In later videos, we will be doing some combat simulations, and you can see how that plays out. The next thing below it are those fate points. Fate points do different things, essentially. So he has a total of 3, and he actually has a current of 3. He just needs to write that in, because I don't think he's used any fate points on the current mission. So how fate points work is, depending on how well you rolled on character creation, you can get either 3, or if you get really lucky, 4 or 5 fate points. Every mission you can spend up to your fate points. So mission 1, he has 3 fate points. He spends 2 of them. On the next mission, he has 3 fate points again. You spend fate points to do things like instantly heal 1d10 wounds, or re-roll a test that you failed, or get an automatic 10 on your initiative, which is its initiative determines how or like when you go in combat. So if you have a really high initiative, you go first. If it's low, you go last or middle or wherever, depending on other people's. The other thing with fate points is when your character starts to go into negative numbers. So when he gets into the critical, like I said earlier, bad things can happen to your character. What you can do is you can permanently burn a fate point so that whatever would have happened to your character, so like if it was your arm is blown off, you can permanently burn a fate point so that does not happen. So generally, Space Marines do not die unless their fate points basically reach 0. The other thing they can do with it is on their very last fate point, if they want to go out like a boss, they can burn it and make a heroic sacrifice, which basically turns them God mode for a certain amount of time, and then at the end of it, they drop dead, which is pretty cool. Corruption points are similar to insanity points, except nothing fun happens with corruption. You have a corruption rating, again, between 0 and 100. When it hits 100, your character is removed from play, essentially becoming a Chaos Space Marine. If your corruption is between 1 and 99, nothing happens to your character. Kind of boring, but whatever. So let's scroll down a little bit, and we'll take a look at, I guess, a weapon he has here, because he has the stats for his Force Warhammer. So his Force Warhammer is his main melee weapon. You'll see him bludgeon many people on the head. Many Xenos will be killed with this weapon. It is basically his librarian special weapon. You know, they get force weapons. He has a Force Warhammer, which if you guys are following along or if you have the book, it's essentially the Force Sword, but we just change it over to a Warhammer, just for looks, just for uniqueness, really. Nothing extra on it. But let's look at some of the damage here. So you can see it's a melee weapon, of course. You have to use it in melee, be next to your enemy. The damage, when he hits people, he rolls a d10 plus 18 damage. The 18 comes from static damage on the weapon, and since he's a librarian, he can also add his psi rating into the damage, and he adds his strength into the damage, his strength bonus, which comes out to be very high, 18. The type of the weapon is bludgeoning, though I think it's actually impact, Sarah, because I think impact is it, but whatever. Not as big of a deal.
It's the correct term for it. Same difference.
Yeah, it doesn't. I know. I'm nitpicky.
That's fine.
So it's an.
That's why I don't let you see my stat box.
I know. Thank you for letting me show it to everyone. Though now all the other players are going to know exactly what your character build is.
That'll just make their death all the more glorious.
I'll ban them from my game if they watch this video. Be like, you cheat. Anyways, so yeah, so there's weapon type. The weapon type is mainly used for when you deal critical damage to people. There's all different kinds of things that can happen depending on your weapon type. The other stat next to it is penetration. People have everything you fight has 2 different ways to reduce damage. They have their armor, and they have their toughness. Penetration effectively lowers the armor on the target that you hit. So with a pen 5, he ignores basically 5 armor on the target. And there you go. There's range. So this weapon's obviously melee, doesn't have a range. There's rate of fire. Rate of fire. Some weapons can be single shotted, or basically every weapon. Well, not a heavy bullseye. It's okay. So some weapons can be single shotted. some weapons have semi-auto, which means they can shoot like, I don't know, 2, 3, 4 bullets per round. Then other weapons have fully auto, which means they can shoot like 5, 6 or so bullets per round. Individual stats do vary, but that's basically what the rate of fire is. Clip is just how many ammo you'd have in it, and then reload is the reload speed. And then weapons sometimes have special rules. The special rules for his weapon is it's balanced, which means he gains a plus 10 to his parry checks. And then the other special to it is it has Killing Will, which is when he hits people, he can channel warp energy through the weapon and into his target, ripping it apart, which is pretty cool and has been proven to be very devastating, as he has hit numbers so high that I have never seen before in my career of DMing, which is really only about 6 sessions. Anyways. So let's look at the right here. This would be fairly fast. This is his armor. You'll see the slots head, left arm, body, right leg, left leg. So these indicate the different areas he can be hit, and you'll see the type on it will say 8 on every slot except for his body, which is 10, which means if he gets hit in the head, left arm, right leg, left leg, he has effectively 8 armor. If he gets hit in the body, he has an armor protection of 10. You'll see ranges on the number as well. Like if you see the head is a 1 through 10, or the right arm is 11 through 20. I guess this jumps ahead a little bit, but when people like attack you, or when you attack people, you roll a d100, and if you roll under your weapon skill or your ballistic skill, then you hit. In order to determine where you hit them, you reverse the numbers on the d100 that you rolled for the test. So, if Sorrow rolled a weapon skill attack on somebody for, his Force Warhammer, and he rolls a 15, a 15 would be under his weapon skill of 55. If you reversed the numbers on 15, you would get 51. So that hit would hit the person in the body. Hopefully that's clear enough. So if we look under his power armor, you'll see power armor abilities. These are all the abilities you gain from wearing power armor. So that's kind of cool. Then you see his Space Marine traits and talents. All the ones that are written there are something you get for just being a Space Marine. So they're pretty cool. All the other blanks are spots for him to put new traits and talents that he picks up with his experience points. Below it you can see his psychic powers and his psi rating of 3. I'm not going to go in depth with psychic powers. We'll probably do that in another video, but there you go. And to the right you can see his renown, which he hasn't put anything in yet. You can see his experience, so he has 350 experience points left to spend on things, and his total experience points is 15,500, which is pretty good. You can see his gear, which is repair cement and a squig. I don't know. He killed an orc war boss and took his squig, and he just stuffed it in his pocket somehow. I don't know. Shut up. Okay. Anyways, let's move on to. The last thing I want to explain in this video is the 2 different dice rolls. And I know. Let's see. What have you been saying back here, Sarah, behind my back? Gonna grab a drink. Back 20 from armor. Shrug. Redneck accent. I actually start play with fatigue if I fail. A test before combat. LOL. What?
You are behind a hair. Those were things while you were talking. I was just putting them in the box.
Oh,
Then I realized you couldn't read it, and I kept putting stuff in the box for whatever reason. The fatigue thing is my first Dark Templar, or my first Dark Angel insanity,
okay.
Which is pretty shitty, actually.
Yeah. Okay. So, oh my god. Spam up everything, I swear. Okay. So why don't we explain the difference between the d100 and the d10 dice, which is fairly easy, I guess. So, why don't we go over let's explain the d100 dice first. So the d100 dice, of course, looks like this. I'll spam it up a little bit, and it's basically a percentile dice. This dice is mainly used for tests, and the tests are always based off your characteristic. So it's the total number. So it's his 55 weapon skill, his 30 ballistic skill, his 60 willpower. This is what the d100 is used for, is to test those characteristics. So why don't you show like you have some macros of like your power manifestation, right? Why don't you show like how you, so like if you're gonna manifest a power star, like what do you roll? Like where's your macro? Throw that up. Okay. So there's his power manifestation macro. So it's like if he uses a psychic power, you'll see him roll this. You'll see his d100, and he rolled a 3, which is amazingly good. And he has his under 75. What the 75 is, and this is all based on his willpower. This is a willpower test. And I know on his sheet it says 60, but if you saw at the very bottom, the psi rating is 3. Whenever he makes an unfettered psychic manifestation, he rolls his willpower, plus he can add 5 times his psi rating to the roll, which equals 15. So thus you get 75. Why don't you show us some more of your other rolls? Like, why don't you click some of your rolls and then like explain kind of how they work? I guess, like your tests, I guess.
For psi powers?
You could do like psi powers or something, or like, how about like your weapon skill? Like, how does it look like when you attack people with your weapon? Or how about dodging, stuff like that?
They're all just hundreds, basically, because I tend to do the math in my head. I do have one for melee, which is that after I'm under a 60 for my melee stuff. And then the hammer damage itself is that, which is dice rolls. The 3 plus 18 is the 1d10 plus 18. 18 static damage. So it gives me a 21. That's actually a pretty bad roll. A 3, it's kind of low usually. And with an AP of 5. On the hammer as well, being a psyker, I can roll a thing called Killing Will. Currently I can actually use it fettered, unfettered, or pushed. Usually just fetter it. But it just basically allows me to do a willpower test against an enemy, and if I succeed or beat him, for each level of success I have above his willpower roll, or above my own, I guess, if his fails, I get to do extra damage to him. Like, that doesn't actually have any power because I just roll 1d10s like so. But it can be pretty high. In one of the videos, well, in the last monster we fought, I actually did like 70 damage in one hit to him through that. So it's pretty high considering he probably only had like 25 wounds or something.
Yeah.
I could have one-shot him. Base, just normal stats. I don't know how much armor he had. I'm not privy to that information.
So notice on your weapon skill you rolled under 60. Is your weapon skill actually 60 and 55 is just on the sheet?
Should be 60 now.
Oh,
Haven't
okay.
updated anything. That last mission, I had experience that was left over, so I was like, well, I guess I can upgrade it one more.
Okay. So your weapon skill is actually 60. So, okay.
It should be. I'll change it at the end of the mission, or I'll change it back, and then I'll change it back up since I did it mid-mission.
Okay. So I think these rolls right here kind of explain the difference between the dice. So generally you'll see the d100s used for tests, and then if you I guess, so you see the d100s used for tests, testing agility, testing your intellect, testing your hit, testing your melee hit, testing your ranged hit, and then if you do hit with weapons, the d10s are generally the damage you deal. So like you could see his roll up here. He rolled his d10 plus 18 for his damage. And then above it was his test to hit, which is a d100. So I think that kind of goes over basic characteristics and the difference between the dice and basic look on the character sheet, really. So I think we'll go ahead and cut it off here, and I think maybe the next video would do like combat or something. I don't know. We could do combat. So, I hope this helps, and if there's still any more confusion, just go ahead and comment and yell at me if you're still confused, and we'll try to answer it. So, thank you guys for tuning in, and I will see you guys later.